ELISA'S Diary by Doris Louisa Oranos, illustrated by Byron Ginn. Today is the saddest day of my life, Elisa wrote in her diary on March 25th. She was going to continue, but her father knocked on the door and said, "It's 9 o'clock, dear. Turn off the lights and go to sleep." Elisa put her pen and notebook away in her backpack and promptly obeyed. In the semi-darkness, she could just make out the objects in her room. She had been here before, but it seemed to her as though it was the first time. The bright, vivid colors of her bedspread, which she liked so much, now seemed cold and muted. Elisa looked at the little porcelain squirrel and remembered the day it was given to her. It was the first time she visited this country. She had come to spend some time with her grandmother. One night she heard a sound like something scratching under the eave of the house. She became frightened, thinking that it might be mice, and she ran to her grandmother. Grandma took her to the patio and motioned to her to be very quiet. When they reached the back, she saw 2 squirrels playing on the roof right above her room. They were sliding down a branch and leaping onto the roof tiles to gather acorns. Then they would scurry back to the branch and do it all over again. Since there were no squirrels in her country, this was a new experience. She enjoyed watching the squirrels so much that when her vacation was over, Grandma bought her a squirrel figurine and put it on her night table. "It will be right here waiting for you when you get back." "I'll be back soon, Grandma. I love this place. Maybe someday I'll come and live with you." But that was then, and this is now. Who needs squirrels? She asked herself. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She was exhausted. It had been a long day that for some reason had gone slowly. That morning she had been in Puerto Rico, and now she was in the United States of America. Except that this time, supposedly, it was forever. A tear rolled down her cheek and landed on the pillow. Elisa was 10 years old, and her brother Francisco was 12. At least, if they were going to go to the same school, she would have felt protected. But they weren't. And of course, boys of that age typically don't want anything to do with their little sisters anyway. "He's unbearable," she thought aloud. Just then, her brother came in. "Who's unbearable?" asked Francisco. "You," answered Elisa, holding nothing back. "Oh, why is that?" asked her brother, surprised. "Because you leave me alone all day when you're out running around." "It's obvious that you're afraid to go out," answered her brother. "Look, I've met some neighbors, and they're nice." "And in what language do you speak to them, huh?" "Well, in English." "I can imagine the crazy things you come up with." "But at least I try," answered her brother. "What you have to do is make an effort. If they don't understand me, I talk with my hands until something happens." "I write well in English, and when I read, I understand a lot. But now, when they talk to me, I don't understand a word." "Listen, the woman who lives in the house on the corner—" "Which one?" interrupted Elisa. "The one who gave me $2 to take care of her cat." "What about her?" "She told me that she used to listen to the news on the radio and got used to hearing English that way. And then, little by little, she understood English better and better." "I don't like the radio," declared Elisa. "Turn on the TV then. But not to those lovey-dovey soaps in Spanish and all that silly stuff you like." "What do you want me to watch then?" "Things from here, like baseball, football." "Football is brutal. I despise sports." "Oh well, if you'd rather be ignorant." "Okay, forget it." Elisa regretted ever having wanted to be in the same school as her know-it-all brother. She'd have to solve her problems on her own. But how? The summer came to an end and the school year commenced. That's when she met Jose. That day, she wrote in her diary, "I met a student from Guatemala. He's very quiet, and he spends all his time with his head down, drawing in a notebook. He has sad, dark eyes. I thought he was going to talk to me once, but he didn't. He just smiled and kept on drawing." She read what she had written and added, "I think I'm going to like the school after all." The fact is that she didn't like the school one bit. The second day of classes, the English teacher called her name, which sounded more like Alicia than Elisha. She got up from her desk expecting a disaster, and that's exactly what happened. She was asked a question that she didn't understand. When it was repeated, she understood even less. She was so nervous that she could only stammer a few syllables. She couldn't continue, and she collapsed in her seat in front of those 40 faces, her opponents, some disbelieving, some mocking. How embarrassing! Around noon, Jose's turn came. He got up, and he spoke shyly of the customs and traditions of his country. He mentioned the quetzal, a bird with soft feathers, a green crest, and a red chest. He told how this gorgeous bird was the symbol of power for the Maya and that today it is officially the national bird of Guatemala. Finally, he showed them a collar drawing and told them proudly that the quetzal on the Guatemalan flag was an emblem of national liberty. Everyone clapped. He sat down and, as always, he put his head down and went back to drawing. In the afternoon, each student wrote a composition. Elisa wrote about her home, Puerto Rico. Like Jose, she described its customs and traditions and explained the symbolism of Puerto Rico's shield. A lamb, the emblem of peace and fraternity, appears in the green center. Above the lamb is a bundle of arrows, symbol of the creative force, and above those is a yoke, which represents the joining of forces necessary to attain success. She thought it turned out pretty well, but writing was one thing and talking was another. That night, she didn't open her diary because she was tired of complaining, even if it was only to her diary. The next morning, Elisa smiled for the first time since classes had started. She got a good grade on her composition. She wanted to show it to everyone so that they'd see she wasn't so dumb, but she didn't do it. Maybe she'd show it to Jose, though. Yes, to him. So during recess, she called to him and proudly showed him her paper. He looked at it, and lowering his eyes, he said with a brief smile, "Congratulations." "Thanks," said Elisa. "And how did you do?" "Okay." "No doubt you got an A, and you don't want me to be embarrassed." "No, it's not that, Elisa. It's that I picked up English by listening. You know, on the street, I never took English in school. I write it like I hear it, and everything comes out wrong." Elisa read the paper that he handed her, and in one sweeping glance she saw what he meant. She didn't know what to say. "But you speak it very well," Elisa tried to console him. "Speaking is one thing and writing is another." "And vice versa," said Elisa. "And the opposite." "And the other way around." They laughed so hard that the rest of the kids came over to see what was so humorous, but they didn't tell anyone their secret. That afternoon they made a deal. She would help him with writing, and he, in turn, would help her with pronunciation. 12 years later, Elisa was getting ready for work. She pulled down a box of shoes from the top shelf of her closet. In the rush, several things fell on top of her. One of them was her old diary. It fell open to the last page. She picked it up and read, "Today I received my high school diploma. When I looked at myself in the mirror with my cap and gown and my gold honors tassels, I remembered the little girl who arrived here confused, scared, and sad. I'm happy now." She put away the notebook, got dressed, and headed for work. When she entered the classroom, her students looked at her, some shy, some confused, some scared. She saw those sad, preliminary first day of school looks that she knew so well. She opened her lesson planner, thought a moment, and then shut it. She stood up and wrote on the board, "The joining of forces." Then she said, "I'm going to tell you the story of a Quetzal that came down to the plain with the gentleness of a lamb, and a lamb that soared to great heights on the wings of a Quetzal."